It is very expensive to do this type of work, but if you do this yourself, you can do it and save yourself literally thousands of dollars. And here you'll see all the different types of materials that you can use for fiberglassing that transom on your boat. So you want to have some type of resin that will stay tacky between layups. We're gonna go look at some coring material. Now you've heard of the different coring materials that we have for transom, your marine grade plywood or composite board. There's all different types of things that you can use. Another option that you guys have for transom, you can actually use poured transom. This stuff is ideal for bonding that coring material to the transom. We got to use some type of gel coat. They have gel coat with wax or gel coat that's without wax. You got to be thinking about if you're doing a transom from the inside or you're doing the transom from the outside. There's a big debate online as to inside versus outside. Let's go ahead and get the price breakdown of how much everything costs. Hey guys, if you've ever wondered how to do a transom and how much it actually costs to do one, this is the video you're going to want to watch. In this video, we're going to cover all the supplies that you're going to need, all the tools you're going to need, all the resins, the different types of resins, the different types of coring material, the different types of fiberglass material we're going to use to do a full transom on a boat. And at the end, we're going to cover the cost of everything. I'm going to be showing you the cost throughout the entire video. And we're going to go through everything that you're going to need for this type of project to do it yourself. So let's get started. If you're new to the channel, I've done a couple transoms already. I've done my Grady White, I've done another Grady White, I've done my Zebra Skiff, and also I'm currently working right now on my 1978 Seacraft Scepter. I'm also helping Alfred Montaner on his rib boat. So I'm currently working on two transoms. So this video basically is going to be for your average person that's going to be doing this at home, and it's going to be using polyester or vinyl ester resin. We're not going to really talk about epoxy in this video, although you could, but we're trying to keep the cost as low as possible so you guys can afford to do this at home. Okay, so we're going to assume that you've already torn down the existing transom, that you've taken all the wood or the coring material in the transom that you currently have out, and we're going to start from scratch. Okay, so the first thing you're going to need, all right, is you're going to need some fiberglass. Guys, and I'm at FGCI, where you can get every single material, all the supplies that you need for your transom job. And here you'll see all the different types of materials that you can use for fiberglassing that transom on your boat. Okay, so you're going to need basically two different types of material, and that's real basic. Is going to be your mat. This is your matting material. Once you guys grind down your transom and you have it nice and clean, you want to lay down a nice fresh layer of mat just so you get some nice material down on the transom. Okay, and that's going to be this guy right here. Okay, I'm going to put the amount of yardage that you would need to do a job like this, and then we're going to tally that up at the end so you guys will have an idea of how much everything costs. Okay, the other material that you're going to use is going to be this 1708. This is 1708 fiberglass. The 17 ounce is going to be this top layer here. It's a woven fiberglass material, and then the back is your mat. So you have your fresh layer, and then this is what's going to go over your coring material over here. All right, and you're going to use quite a bit of this. You could get into using the woven. This is going to take a lot more resin, and you don't need as much of 1708. But this is a lot harder to work. It doesn't contour that much to curves and edges and things like that. This is a little bit more old school. You could use this, but 1708 is really strong. And this is what I've used for my transoms. I really haven't had to use anything else. Now there are other material that you can use, such as carbon fiber and things like this, but we're not building a race boat or anything like that, so we don't need this. This is very expensive. As you can see, just $65 a yard. Super expensive stuff. All right, if you guys are cutting your fiberglass, you're going to want a good pair of scissors. Your house scissors are going to only cut it for a little bit until they dull out, so you want some good scissors. Or FGCI also has these amazing clippers that are electric. Those guys are a lifesaver. They do have it. You just have to call FGCI, and they do have them in stock. So, and guys, the scissors that I'm talking about are just like these. These are awesome scissors to help you cut all these multiple layers of glass. This is what you want, scissors like these. So now that we got the glass that we're going to be using out of the way, we can go into some of the resins that we're going to use. Okay, so check out all the different types of resins that we have here to choose from. When you're doing a transom, you're going to be laying up layers of fiberglass upon layers. On a transom, you're going to be doing somewhere between 5 to 7 layers depending on the application. So you want to have some type of resin that will stay tacky between layups. If you have a resin that cures after you lay it up, you would have to grind that layer down or sand it down and then lay up your next layer. Okay, so you want to use something like a GP hand layup, which is a high quality resin. So this is a polyester resin that's going to allow you to lay up your fiberglass layers one over the next. And then you can also use a boatyard resin, which is a lower grade resin, but still a good resin to use. You could also use a vinylester resin. This is the highest quality resin that you can use that is not epoxy based. And you can use this very strong resin. It's much stronger. It's stronger than the other polyester resins, but you will have to sand between the layups of these guys. So the price for the polyester boatyard resin is going to come out to about 55 bucks, 54 bucks for a gallon. The hand layup is going to be, and the general purpose is going to be about 70 bucks for a gallon of these guys. And then when you get into the vinyl ester, you're looking at $144 a gallon of this stuff. This stuff is premium, so it's almost 3 times the price of your boatyard resin. Now you could do your boat transom with your polyester resin. There's nothing wrong with that. I've done that before. But if you're looking to go high quality, you can go with vinyl ester. And if you're looking for something in the middle, the GP hand layup is very good as well. And you're looking at somewhere in between. Okay, so that's what you're going to be using for your transom. I definitely recommend that, so you don't have to be grinding in between the layups. Yeah, and you can also get them by the 5-gallon buckets, which is going to save you some cash as well. They have it in every single type of resin here, and I would definitely recommend to buy it in those. So I'm going to give you the, as they're also going to need containers like this. A lot of these are reusable, meaning that once the resin cures inside of them, you can kind of take the resin out and get a couple more uses out of them. So this is your typical, this is a quart container. Get a ton of these. You're going to need a lot of these guys as well. You could also get some of these as well. These are great too, the cheaper options, but this is something that you're definitely going to need while you're doing your project. So guys, if you are laminating resins and gel coats, you're going to need MEK, which are these guys here. They come in gallons, they come in all these different sizes as well. I personally like to use the red when I'm mixing up when I'm doing my layups, just because it's easy to see that it's been mixed up. And then when you're doing your gel coats and things like that, you're going to need a clear MEK so it doesn't affect the color of the gel coat, which is this guy here. And they're fairly cheap and they do last a while. This is for your putties and this is for your gel coats and your resins. Okay, so we got the resins, we have the fiberglass that we're going to use, and now we're going to go look at some coring materials. So let's go take a look at that. Now, you've heard of the different coring materials that we have for transoms. You have your marine grade plywood, you have your composite board. There's all different types of things that you can use. I'm going to give you the price for both. Now, you could save yourself a lot of money by going with marine grade plywood. I don't recommend it, only because if you don't do the layups right, you will get water intrusion. So I don't recommend that you guys use marine grade plywood, and we do have them here, and I'm going to give you the price on those, but they're usually about $100 a sheet. They usually come in about 3/4 inch, and you would, for a standard transom, you would need 2 of these. Okay, if you have a small transom for your boat, you might be able to get away with 1 and using 1 sheet for the transom. That's how I did my zebra skiff. Now, what I like to use for transoms is the composite board material. This is called Kaycell composite board. Now, there's different types of Kaycell composite boards. They come in different densities. The one that we're going to use for the transom is going to be the 26-pound density composite board, and they come in different sizes. They have 3/4 inch, they have the 1/2 inch over here. They also have the 1 inch like this here. Now for your standard transoms, you would need to use usually 2 3/4 inch pieces, laminate them together, or you can use 1.5 inch piece. I don't see those here, but it will be something like this. This is a vinylester material. This is not something that you would want to use on a transom. You want the Kaycell composite board material for your transom. If you're lucky like me, you can get away with one of these sheets for a small boat because the transom is not very big, and then you could just only need to buy one sheet of this stuff. You can get away with maybe a 3/4 inch piece like this, and then be able to use 2 sides to laminate together and laminate up your transom. All right, another option that you guys have for transoms, if you're not doing a coring material for your transom, you can actually use an RJ poured transom. It's a ceramic pour that you pour into the transom. If you guys haven't seen the video where I did my Grady White with a poured transom, I'm going to put the link up here so you guys can check it out. That's another option that you guys can do that might be cost effective for you. So that's definitely an option if you don't want to lay up coring material. And they don't have it here. This is the brand. It's called RJ, but it's the 6011. They can order it for you here. They have it in like a day or two. So what you basically do is you remove all the coring material and you pour in the RJ 6011 into the transom, and you get a solid rock hard transom, and you don't have to worry about laying up anything. Just set it and it's done. It's definitely a good option for you guys, and I'll put the cost of that in here as well. Now that we got our coring material for the transom, we need to bond it together to the actual transom. So we're going to need some type of putty, some type of structural putty to be able to laminate it to the actual transom. So let's go take a look at that. All right guys, so now we're here looking at some of the bonding putties that we can use, and there's quite a bit, so let's go through them. All right, so check it out. These are all the fillers and putties on this side. Now you have everything from polyfill, gel coat putty, vinyl ester putty, lightweight bonding putty, light polyester putty. Okay, these fillers over here, high performance putty, GP putty, right? The one that we're going to use for bonding or coring material to the actual transom is going to be this lightweight bonding putty, FCA. This stuff is ideal for bedding stringers, decks, and bonding that coring material to the transom. This is what I used on my boats. Okay, I've also used, here we go, this is the structural putty. You're going to see that this is going to be polyester resin with fiber mixed into it. This is a very good material for bonding as well. Okay, I've also used this vinyl ester putty. This is a very, very good putty, and I believe this one runs for about 60 to 70 bucks. So this putty, and you would need about a gallon for this job, right? This vinyl ester putty is extremely strong. I use this for bonding my deck to the stringers on my zebra skiff. Extremely good. And you can actually stack that up to about 3/4 of an inch. It's very, very, very good and very strong. Right, so you're gonna need some of that lightweight bonding putty, some type of putty, and you also could do it yourself. You can make your own putty as well, with the resins that we talked about earlier, and I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. Right, so let's go look at how we can make our own putty. If you don't want to spend some money on buying a can of putty, we can make our own putty. Right, and you can do it by mixing all of these different types of fillers and fibers that we have here, and we'll go over them real quick. So chopped glass, that's a very good additive that we can put into your polyester resins to make it stronger, right? So you can make a putty out of that. That's kind of like the structural putty that I showed you over there, right? And when you get into like milled fibers, when you get into the microspheres, all right, these are additives, or talc. These are additives that are going to make your putty easier to sand. So this is more for things like making a fairing compound, or making your own fairing compound. And when you get into things like your chopped glass, that's going to be more for structural, and it'll make your resin structural, because resin on its own is not structural. It's actually very brittle. It needs that fiberglass. It needs that filler to give it more strength. Okay, and this stuff is fairly cheap. I personally like to use the putty already made. I don't like to mix stuff up. It just gets real messy, but that's just me. All right, so you got your transom laminated. It's bonded. We use the fiberglass to do your 5, 6, 7 layers of glass over the coring material. And now we want to go in and we want to make it pretty. So we gotta lock it in, right? We gotta use some type of gel coat or paint. And we're gonna talk about using some gel coat. So we got all of this gel coat that we can choose from. And for an entire transom, I would say that a gallon would be enough to coat an entire transom. And you can do it with the different colors that you want. And all the gel coats come in all these different colors. Dusty white, Matterhorn white, misty white, whisper gray. This is a nice gray right here. This whisper gray, black, red, ice blue, which is a very nice color as well right here. I want to lay on a few layers of gel coat. You can do the first layer without wax. You do 2 or 3 coats, and then on the last coat you would do a wax coat to seal everything in. So they have all of that here. What I recommend you guys use is their new, this is the new brushable gel coat. They just came out with this. I was the first one to actually do a video. I'm going to put that link up here so you guys can see. This stuff is awesome for brushing. It's also awesome for shooting out of a gun. It self levels and makes it really easy to use, and you get an amazing product at the end. Check out the brushable gel coat. I highly recommend it. Speaking of brushes, we're going to need to use brushes. We're going to need to use a couple other things and rollers to do this job. So let's go take a look at that, because you're going to be using a lot of brushes and you're going to be using a lot of rollers. I like to do a mix of both. If I'm doing a lamination like a transom, I do like to use a roller. Something like a 7-inch or a 9-inch works really well. They have all different types here as well. These guys are really good because they don't suck up too much resin. Right here. And this is about the size that you want to use. A 3/16 nap like this was really well. You want to stay away from the foam, because the unless it's specifically made for the resins, because resins will eat up at this foam, and then you get it in your laminate, so you don't want that. So this right here is actually pretty perfect. I like this size. It's easy and easy to work with, and it's manageable. Right? They have these two. These soak up a lot of resin as well. And then you got these guys. You're going to need quite a bit of these. So think about maybe you're going to use one for each layer of glass that you're laminating onto that transom. So I'll get a couple of these packs right here. I would say 2 or 3 of those. Could use these guys as well. These smaller ones for the corners and things like that. It helps if you have somebody to help you do this at home. And then you're going to need some chip brushes. These are fairly inexpensive. All right. I think the 3-inch is probably the best size. 3-inch is really good. These cheap chip brushes are very good. You don't need anything expensive like these guys. But the chip brushes like this, you could get them. I would get a box of like 30 of them, because that's what you're going to need. Box of 30 of those. It's not super expensive. But you definitely are going to need some brushes to work those resins into the lamination, especially in the corners and things like that where the roller can get to. So we talked about the rollers. So now we're going to need something else to get those bubbles out of the lamination, right? We're going to need a roller or a bubble buster. Okay, so check these out. Look at all these different types of rollers that you have and different sizes. They have 6-inch ones. They have these smaller 3-inch ones. Like, which one do you get? They have the different styles, and you're not really sure which one to get. These are a little bit bigger or thicker. Which ones do you need? Well, I like to keep it simple. And you also have these for the corner, right? A lot of this stuff that you're seeing here is for professionals. You do need one of these when you're doing laminations, okay? But you don't need to be getting all intricate into these thicker ones and things like that, right? You could use your brush to try to get the air bubbles out, and then you would need a simple bubble buster like these guys over here. Like, this is way too big. This 6-inch is a little bit harder to manage if you haven't used one of these before on a transom. The size that I like to use is something like this. A 4-inch is perfect. All right, and you can get something like this. This 4.5-inch, real simple. It's manageable. All right, 3-inch might be a little bit too small for something as big as a transom, but I like that size. That size is perfect. This right here is really good as well. This guy right here allows you to work all those bubbles out real easy. These are great right here. When you have tools like this and you're working with resins and things like that, you're going to need acetone to clean your tools. So, and you're also going to need acetone to wipe down the areas that you're working with, like the fresh glass that you just ground out. So you're going to need some type of solvent to clean the area, and that's going to be acetone. And you're going to probably need a few gallons of this stuff because this stuff goes through really quick. So let's see if we can find some here. You have these smaller ones here, and then you got the bigger gallons over here. These also come in 5-gallon drums. I would say about two of these acetones for a project like a transom is probably what you're going to need. I'm going to include all of that in the final cost at the end. You also could use some of this sanding aid when you're using your final coat of gel coat. Just get a gallon of unwaxed gel coat, and you can use a sanding aid here to add that to the solution, so you can get a fully cured final coat of that gel coat. So when you're thinking about doing a transom, you got to be thinking about if you're doing a transom from the inside or you're doing the transom from the outside. I've done both. If you're doing the transom from the outside, you're going to need to be using a little bit more fairing compound and things like that. So that's something to take into consideration. There's a big debate online as to inside versus outside. If you can do the inside, great. If you can do the outside, fantastic. Do what's more comfortable for you. I know shops that have been doing outside transoms for years, so that's the only way they do it, and they've never had failures. And then there's people that swear by the inside. Sure, the inside is stronger. If you do the lamination right from the outside, you're not going to have a problem. I did my Grady White from the outside, haven't had a problem. Have hours on that boat, and nothing has happened to it. So don't get caught up in that. Do what's easier for you. Just make sure you do it right. If you do decide to do your transom from the outside, you're going to need some sandpaper and things like that because you're going to be doing a lot of fairing. Okay, so there's all types of different things that you can use for fairing. Okay, you have all of these hand blocks that you can use, all the different types of sandpaper that you're going to need for doing that. You're also going to need some of those sanders, orbital sanders, to get that transom faired out. If you're going to be doing your transom from the inside, you're not going to be doing as much, but you will have to put the cap back on, and you're going to have to do some fairing there as well. We're going to add that into the cost as well, all the different types for your grinders and things like that. So once you guys have all that rotten wood out of your transom, you're going to need to grind all of that nasty stuff that's on there and get down to fresh, nice glass. But you're going to need a grinding wheel for that, and you're going to need a machine for that. So you're going to need a grinder. You can get that anywhere. They sell those here at FGCI as well. And if you have air tools, fantastic. But if you're like me, I have some cheap materials that I get from like Harbor Freight and things like that. A grinder from Harbor Freight that I use. It's done very well for me and for my application, and they're easy to replace, so it's not that big of a deal. But you're going to need a grinding wheel. So they have these here too, and you're going to need something like this guy. All right, now this is a big one. It's not going to fit your typical disc that you get from Harbor Freight, but these guys over here will. So you're going to need a few of these guys. You're going to have to spend some money on that. Okay, these flaps like this, something like a 26 grit, 40 grit, things like that. And this is more for your professionals that have the air powered tools. Now guys, the last thing we're going to talk about is PPE, which is probably the most important thing that you will need for this project, because you don't want to be breathing this stuff in. You don't want to get resin on your skin. You don't want to get resin in your eye. So you want to protect yourself as much as possible. All right, so we're going to talk about a little bit of the PPE that we can use. So here we have a couple masks. 3M probably makes the most the most popular masks that are out in the industry. It's going to run you about 23 bucks. These don't come with the filters. There's some that do come with the filter, like this one's 70 bucks over here. You don't want to be using these dust masks here because that's not going to protect you against the fumes and those smaller particulates that are in the air. So this is more for like sanding and things like that. But if you're going to be using resin, you want to be using masks like this. All right, and then these are the filters for those masks, like the 3M up here. This is what you want to use. So you're going to be spending a couple bucks on things like this just to get started, so you have protection. Okay, now you can also get into, if you're getting into like painting and things, there's different types of filters that are meant for that. So you're going to have to do your due diligence on that and check the filters that you need for your particular application. We're going to need some gloves, guys. Gloves, tons of gloves. Get yourself 10 packs of gloves because you're going to need them. You're going to go through them all the time. You're going to be doubling up on gloves and using a ton of those. So you need those. You need to have those gloves. Rags, you can use rags, old t-shirts and things like that. A box of these wouldn't hurt. These are super convenient. Eye protection. You're going to need some goggles or things like that. There's a couple other options that we can use that put everything that protect your eyes and your lungs all in one. And that's going to be things like this guy over here. This is super convenient, right? So you have the protection of your face and your mask. You get nothing on your face, none of that itchy fiberglass stuff on your face. This is awesome. These are really expensive, but there's different options. But this is definitely something that you want to look into if you're going to be doing this type of job. But goggles and a mask, a separate mask, work just fine. So we talked about our lungs, and we're protecting our eyes, our lungs, and our face from any resins and chemicals and things like that. You definitely want to invest in some of these Tyvek suits. All right, these suits are really good in protecting your skin from all of that fiberglass dust. You don't want to be getting that stuff on your skin, man. That stuff is going to leave you itchy for days. And if you've ever worked with fiberglass, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You have different types of these suits that you can get. Some are thicker than others, some are cheaper than others, like these thin ones. You're going to be very hot in these suits, but you're going to need to be protected. And I would say you would need about 2 or 3 for this type of job. You don't need to be wearing one of these when you're actually laminating and things like that. But when you're grinding, you definitely want to be in one of these suits and be protected. When you guys are working on laminating and things like that, you want to wear loose clothing, long sleeve, old t-shirt, your eye protection, your gloves, old pants, and maybe some boots and things like that. That's going to be a big help. Things that you're not worried about getting dirty. That's the kind of clothes that I have. I have a whole bunch of clothes that's set up just for that I have dedicated just for lamination and things that I don't require grinding. Guys, we've pretty much gone over all the supplies and tools that you're going to need to do a transom yourself at home. So you guys get a really good idea of how much it costs and why people charge so much money to do these transoms. Down here in Miami, they're quoting anywhere between $5,000 to $7,000 to even $9,000 to do a transom on a boat. It is very expensive to do this type of work, but if you do this yourself and you take your time, you can do it and save yourself literally thousands of dollars. So let's go ahead and get the price breakdown of how much everything costs, and it's going to be an average more or less depending on what you want to do, the type of resins you want to use, the thickness of your transom, and how many boards of coring material that you need for your specific project. It will vary, but so you get an idea, let's go ahead and break this down. All right, guys, so we're doing the final cost summary, and what you're seeing here is the constant cost that's going to be used in every single style build that I'm going to show you. The total constant cost is going to be $1,000, and that includes your fiberglass mat, about 9 yards of that, fiberglass 1708, 15 yards of that, your cork containers for mixing, your MEK, bonding putty, gel coat, chip brushes, roller packs, bubble busters, acetone, sanding aid, sandpaper, grinding disc, goggles, mask, gloves, and your Tyvek suit. That's the constant cost that you're going to use for this entire build. So that's going to stay the same, and that's already at $1,000. So now we have your build options, and the first build option is going to be your budget build, and that's using 2 sheets of marine grade plywood at $200, $100 each, and you're going to use 5 gallons of your boatyard resin, and we're going to add that cost to the constant cost, which would give you $1,472 for doing a budget build transom with marine grade plywood and boatyard resin. If you're on a budget, this is really the cheapest option that you can go with. Now, moving on to the mid build, using Kaycell composite board, you can use 2 sheets of 3/4 inch or 1.5 inch sheet of Kaycell composite board. Using GP hand layup resin, you're looking at a cost of $2,074 to $2,093, depending on which Kaycell sheet you use. So that would be a mid-style build. You're using a high-profile resin, which is very good quality, and you're using the Kaycell composite board to ensure no rot in the future. This is a mid-build. It's going to cost you anywhere between $2,000 to $2,100. This is the pro build. You're using Kaycell composite board, 1.5 inch sheet, and you're going to be using vinylester resin, which is the most expensive resin at $569 for a 5-gallon pail. And that totals the build to $2,219. This pro build option is for somebody that is looking to use the best material possible for the best build quality. Now what you're seeing up here is what I call the Kaycell Boatyard resin build, which is a very common build. You get the benefit of the no rot and you get the savings of the Boatyard resin. So as you can see here, we're using the Kaycell 1.5 inch composite sheet at $647, the Boatyard resin at $269, and that total comes down to $1,919. But if you use my discount code PFP10 and save 10%, you actually bring it down to $1,727. You really cannot beat that. That is probably the best bang for your buck for this type of build. I also included tools as a maybe cost, just to give you guys an idea of how much these tools cost. Scissors, $10, grinder, $50, sander, $50, oscillating tools, $50. You may already own these, but if you do not, you would have to add this cost into your overall cost. Let me know in the comments which build you guys would use, and if you guys found this video helpful, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.